Hi guys, and welcome back to this series of videos on GCSE America 1920 to 1973, Opportunity and Inequality. So we are going to talk today about what happened to women in the 1920s. So during the 1920s, life was changing for millions of American women. Many had jobs for the first time and were wearing clothes and behaving in ways that would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. So, why were things changing? In what ways were some women behaving and dressing and working differently? Did these things affect all American women or just some of them? Okay, so these are all the things we're going to address today. Now, in order to understand the change and the difference, we have to understand where this whole thing begins. So, before the First World War, most women led very restricted lives. Middle and upper class women were expected to behave politely at all times and wear long skirts or dresses, not show very much flesh, don't play in any energetic sports and wearing little makeup. A relationship with a man was strictly controlled, and you always had to walk around with a chaperone. You could never be unaccompanied with a man on your own. So it's unacceptable to be seen dancing with a man without wearing gloves, for example, and smoking was completely and utterly unacceptable at the time. Poorer women who still had to work, there were fewer opportunities than there were for men. Women usually had to settle for poorly paid jobs like cleaning and low skilled factory work and secretarial work. There were not the same opportunities. A woman couldn't easily or realistically go on to become a doctor at this time. She would have to instead be, a cleaner of the hospital or maybe a nurse. Also, think back to when we look at the suffragettes empowering the people. As I'm sure you'll remember, women cannot vote. They do not have suffrage. So why did the war change things? Well, when America joined the war in 1917, large numbers of men went away to fight. As a result, women began to take over their jobs. They worked just as hard and as well as men, and the money they earned, it gave them a sense of independence. They no longer had to rely on their husband's wealth. So, for example, women are earning money for the very first time, therefore, they can do what they like. This also meant that women had much more independence and much more freedom in how they wanted to act. They didn't rely on the man anymore. Partly as a result of this, American women were given the right to vote in 1920. By 1929, there were around 10.5 million women with jobs, which is around 25% more than in 1920. With money of their own, women could make more decisions about how they lived. They could live on their own, for example, and were less likely to stay in unhappy marriages if they didn't want to. Interestingly, the divorce rate doubled during the 1920s, and with fewer restrictions on their lives, some women began to behave and dress differently, more provocatively, for example. They became known as flappers, and they began to wear more revealing clothes, go on dates without chaperones, smoking and drinking in public. So, what was a flapper? Well, it was the word used to describe this type of new, independent, fashionable young woman. It became a common sight throughout American cities. Some rode motorbikes and went to the nightclubs, often had bobbed hair and makeup, smoked in public, wore short dresses. Actresses like Clara Bow made their careers on this kind of image. However, all of this shocked more traditional members of society. Some worried Americans even formed an anti flirt league to protest against the flappers' behaviour. Others, particularly older civilians in rural areas, saw flappers as an extreme example of the evils of modern life. They felt family, life, and religion and traditional values were under threat. The president of Florida University famously said that the short skirts of the flappers are born of the devil and are carrying the present generation to destruction. We do have to remember, though, that just as the economic boom did not benefit everyone and provide everyone with a good life, so many of Americans' women's lives did not change. For the vast majority of women, life went on as it always had done. Flappers were mainly middle class and upper class women from northern states, such as Zelda Fitzgerald, the wife of the famous author of The Great Gatsby. For the vast majority, life went on as normal. They were too busy working or raising families to go to wild parties and did not have enough income to buy the new luxuries which freed up their time. one of the most important things to remember is that despite gaining the vote during the 1920s, women were still not equal to men, still earning less than them, and often earning less in the same job.